think it's too noisy, or?
No, I should be fine. We've got the microphone here. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Jackal Den podcast. Obviously, a special episode here, filming deep in the tunnels underneath Choctaw Stadium. And I have with me a very special guest, a gentleman who really needs no introduction in the rugby world, but since we're in America, let me go ahead and introduce him. This is assistant coach Mario Ledesma. Mario has been involved in the sport of rugby for 5 decades now, and 84 caps with the Pumas national side, captain, or made his debut in 96 versus Uruguay, captain in 98 versus Japan, 4 trips to the World Cup. So obviously a very long and storied career. So welcome to the show, Mr. Ledesma.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So let's kind of go back. For most Americans, when they think of Argentina, they think of obviously Lionel Messi as of recent.
Yeah.
For me, being an older guy, Diego Maradona, 86, 90. And for a lot of people, they don't understand that. Yes, you play rugby union in Argentina. How did you get into rugby? What was your introduction to the sport?
Well, first thing I would say is rugby has well over 120 years in Argentina. Obviously, it was brought by the English and English schools in Argentina and stuff like that. And I was lucky enough to go to an English school, and so I had rugby at school, and then I went to a club. My father took me to Regatas de Bellavista, was a club near where I lived, and I was 4, and my brother was 6, and my other brother was 3. They took us all together. So, and I have 5 brothers and a sister. We all play rugby, so it's
it's always been in the family from the get-go. Obviously, you made your bones being a hooker for all those years. In 2011, even the Daily Telegraph mentioning that you were one of the best hookers in that tournament, that World Cup that year. Were you always a hooker?
No, I started as a front row.
Okay.
More was a prop than a hooker.
Okay.
Then I started playing back row, and then I went back to hooker when I was 22.
Okay.
So from 15, 16 to 22, I was a back row.
Oh, wow.
And then I changed when I was 22 because my club needed it, and it turned out a good idea.
It worked out for you well.
Yeah.
Americans, another thing that they're not really commonly in knowledge of here is that up until 1996, this was strictly an amateur game, meaning you could not make a living. And then in 1996, everything changed.
Not in Argentina, though.
You were still amateur in Argentina at that point. So you go to France, to where you could play professionally, and had a very long career there in France. Heineken Cups, Challenge Cups, everything. What was the shift like? Were there a lot of Argentinians at that time playing in France at the time?
Yeah. When so boys started going, my friends started going over there. Maybe around 97 was the first Argentinians that went to France. Before that, they were going mainly to Italy, especially in the 1980s. So end of the 90s, beginning of the 2000s, we started going to France. And I went over there in 2000 when I was 27. So I was pretty
older, already
old.
Up there, yeah.
And I played for 11 years, So.
Did we kind of go back to the World Cup? Obviously, the 2007 World Cup, and absolutely, this is when, for me, Argentina came onto the map. You run a clean sweep through the pool that year. You beat France, you beat Ireland in your pool. Namibia, I can't remember the other team. You make it to the quarterfinal, you beat Scotland. Eventually, you run into the champion Springboks there in the semifinal, and then you end up beating France once again to come in 3rd place. Do you think that influence of the guys going overseas and playing made a stronger Pumas squad back home?
100%. You were saying that professional rugby started in 96, which is kind of not true because some guys in France were getting paid for the last 20 years. Professional rugby under the table started much earlier, and so professional rugby in Argentina started around 2012, 2013, because that's when rugby championship started, and then Hawara started going into Super Rugby.
Yeah.
But before that, the only way to make a living out of that, it was going to Europe, and at the time was the only way you could attain your potential. So it's mainly thanks to France that we had that 2007 World Cup, because there was only one player who wasn't professional, and he was playing in Argentina at the time, who was Aguja, he was a winger. So all the other players, the other 29 players were professional, playing in France, a couple of England, but mainly in France.
That 2007 team led by Hall of Famer Augustin Pichot. So that was a very special moment, obviously, for you in your national team time. 2011 rolls around. You announce, "Hey, I'm ready to hang up the boots a bit," and you go to coaching with Stade Francais, and along with a relationship that you would form at that time with Michael Chica.
Yeah.
Both coaching. Was coaching always in the cards for you? Did you always know, okay, when I'm done, I'm going to coach, or did it just something that just gradually came to you?
No, not at all. Because in our DNA in Argentina, rugby was a game. It wasn't a job. So when I went to play in France, I couldn't understand they were paying me to do what I love the most, and I kept it going pretty long.
Yeah, made a career out of it.
Yeah, and I stopped playing when I was 38. But I never thought about coaching. I was always thinking about going back to Argentina and making a living out of a normal job.
What would that normal job would have been?
Well, my father has cattle, and he's a
farmer.
Yeah, farmer.
Yeah.
He's a veterinarian. I did some studies when I was younger, so I was hoping to go back and work with my father. But Michael Checa called me, and I said, "I'm really honored, but I'm not going to do it." And then I had a chat with my wife, and she said, "Well, why don't you go and talk to him in person and let him explain you what he's thinking about?" And I had a chat with him, and that's how it started. But I never coached before that. Not even youngsters. I wasn't a coach. No.
It's that transition that you've
Yeah,
got to
I'm gonna
make.
go get my bag and then I'm gonna
As we all have to make it as players at some point where you make that decision. So obviously you're with Michael Chica. You end up leaving Stade Francais and you go to Montpellier under Fabien Gaultier, current France coach.
Yeah.
What was that working relation? Obviously this was 10 plus years ago.
Yeah.
Right around 10 years ago.
Yeah.
We've seen the success that France has had in recent years, obviously hosting the Rugby World Cup later this year. Did you always feel, as you were moving up kind of the coaching thing, that you were just learning things from the people above you at all times? You kind of picked little habits that they had and maybe picked different ideas that they had?
And obviously, 100%. And I was lucky enough, and lucky enough, and obviously that was always my goal. If I was going into coaching, I wanted to learn from the best, and I try to follow the best as much as I can and get jobs not very well paid, but I knew I was investing in myself. So when I went with Michael to Stade Francais, and then he left, and I quit it because he left, and I thought that was one of the best decisions I made. I went and coached with Fabien, obviously different style of coaching, but that was the interesting, more of a Latin, more of an outcome driven, and the other one Anglo-Saxon, more of a process driven. And you start becoming ambidextrous. And then I went to Australia
with the Waratahs, yes,
with the Waratahs and Wallabies, and again different to top 14 in France, much different. So very rich in learnings.
We bring up the 2015 Rugby World Cup, where you at this point, especially in the rugby community, you're getting kind of a bit of a reputation as a scrum doctor at this point. Obviously, helping Michael Chica, lead the Wallabies to the final. Unfortunately, you go against New Zealand. They do end up winning in the final, and I was always a very big fan of Michael Chica when he decided to leave Australia. Dave Rennie comes in. I got it, but I thought, Michael, there's just something about that guy and his story and his path to where he got to that I just have a lot of respect for. Maybe it's because of the immigrant parents thing. You know, I'm also a product of that as well. You end up going back to Argentina, the Jaguares, like we had said, 2012, it becomes the rugby championship. Easily on in all of that, it becomes notorious that the scrum, the Argentinian scrum, this is all you ever hear about. It's how tough that Argentinian scrum is. Me being a Springbok supporter, I'm always game for it. I love the Argentinian scrum because it's very, very competitive. You end up with the Jaguares in Super Rugby. They have a bit of limited success early on. Later on, they end up making the final in the last season that they compete in Super Rugby. You become the head coach of the Pumas. Limited success, obviously, in the 2019 campaign in Japan. Obviously, it was a very odd tournament with the tsunami or the cyclone and all this kind of thing. You head back, COVID hits. No more Jaguares, obviously, and you're kind of left with like, okay, how do I put together a bunch of, because you had a lot of guys playing on the Jaguares that were no longer playing now.
90%.
Yeah, and I remember blogging about this at that time and saying this was the collateral damage of COVID.
Yeah.
Because
but it was always going to happen.
It was because, I mean, me being a South Africa fan, you always kind of looked at like, you had New Zealand, Australia, and then you had us and you guys. We were always kind of like at the table, but at the end of the table. You know, and I don't mean to cause controversy with New Zealand and Australia, great rugby programs in themselves, but I always kind of felt like we were the odd men out in it with the Jaguares.
Obviously, logistically,
we were just, we were
too far. Especially us.
So the 2020? It becomes the Tri-Nations once again. The Springboks decide to sit out. They haven't played in over a year. I'm getting a bit nervous at this point. The tournament decides to be held all in Australia that year. Kind of come into it. Obviously, you've got a very strong All Black side with Ian Foster taking over the helm from Steve Hansen. But all the teams have pretty much new coaches at this point. And November 14th, 2020. A day that I get goosebumps thinking of. If any of you people have not, go Google that game. Nicolas Sanchez puts on a clinic against the All Blacks that day, and you guys take it home. You get your first ever victory over the All Blacks. What was that feeling like as a coach?
Well, the game in itself, obviously, is the end result of many things which you talked about. Like obviously 2019 didn't go as we planned for many reasons, but then COVID hits. Pandemic in Argentina and the lockdown was big. We stayed in our houses like for 6 months, kids not going to school, guys not going to jobs. Our guys weren't training, so they were training in their apartments and stuff like that, and we started training together, but it was only phys, but doing S&C stuff, and then we started touching the ball, but we couldn't pass the ball. So we did as if the guy was passing the ball, and we were catching imaginary balls, and in 2 months' time, we knew we were playing the All Blacks. So it made it really hard, but what that made was guys started getting tighter, and they were getting angrier about the whole situation, and the Springboks not going and us going, but we were the only ones in quarantine. So All Blacks weren't in quarantine, Wallabies weren't in quarantine, and we were locked down for 2 weeks without getting out of our rooms, eating in our rooms. Guys were getting really anxious,
stir crazy. It was
and mental health issues and stuff like that, and everything that like built up the perfect storm, I think. And as you said, I think that day I was never in doubt that we were going to win that game.
This was the feeling of that game. It was a beautiful game. Obviously, like I said, Nicolas Sanchez just putting on an absolute clinic that day. And then success becomes short. You're not really having a whole lot of success, and you decide to step down. I had already brought this up the first time we met, that I made a video that day saying, after the struggles that this team had with the scrum, wouldn't it be awesome if Mario ended up here? Everybody thought it was crazy, and here you ended up here. So that's where we get to today. I asked some questions from some of the followers, and we have some questions here. And I guess the first one we'll start out with is Sunday's performance. How would you rate that overall? I'll ask for your rating, and then I will let you know what we, the fans, saw.
Okay. Look, obviously the result is not what we expected, and especially at least 3 of the tries was our wrongdoing more than their capacity to score those tries. Obviously they did, but when we think about the whole process, and when we think about where this team was coming from last year, and how the beginning of the season we didn't have the whole team together, and the Argentinians only got here the last 2 weeks, and players that struggled last year, we are starting to see them bloom, especially props that really had a bad year last year, and then they had a good game this year, and then a lot of intangibles like sticking together, like through rough times, not letting the guard down, not quitting, because that could have been a 50.
This was what I was going to get to when it got to our version of it.
And it was the other way around. We started playing better in the second half, and we finished by scoring 2 tries, and it could have been 3.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of positives there. Obviously, there's a lot of things that we see that you don't see. So the progress that's been made by many of the guys that started with us, and you see the progress in the last 7 or 8 weeks. The way that they start, the cohesion around the team starting to build together with the organization, and I think that in anything, things don't change from one day to the next, and everything that lasts in the long term is hardly achieved, like in a hard way, and costs a lot of blood and tears, and we're in that process. But that was a really good first step. Again, the first guys that are not happy with the result is us. But we see a lot of stuff that starts building, and obviously we're in the middle of a transition. Like the GM changed, the whole staff changed, 70% or 80% of the players changed. So. And they only arrived here a couple of weeks ago, so I think that we'll see a better team from weekend to weekend.
Well, from the fan side of the view, this is what we saw. We saw a team go up against arguably a much stronger side. They've been together longer. They've been there. A lot of these guys have been there a couple of years now with Houston. But we watched
same coaching staff,
a team that's fairly brand new go 16-16 in lineouts. We lost 2 total scrums. Last year, our scrum percentage for the entire season was less than 10%. We held our own. We saw the difference. The fellow members of the Jackal Den.
And last year, most of the guys were there against Houston. They lost 12 out of 14 scrums against Houston.
Yeah, you look at the season wide. We were never competitive at the scrum. We saw a team that was not only competitive in the lineouts, the set piece play, but dominated it a lot of times.
And the driving mode, especially.
Yeah, the try off the line out to Big Mike to Boyson was beautiful. That is what we see as fans as a difference already. We're seeing the cohesion. We get out early and we see you and all the other coaching staff running through the paces with these boys during warm-ups. We didn't have that last year. So we do see a difference. Us fans, we do see a difference already. Obviously, you don't want that to be the scoreline, but we already know that's not going to be the case. We played a team that was very, very good. We're going into week 2. We're excited about it, obviously. So, next couple of questions from the other guys. What are your long-term plans here with USA Rugby? Obviously, you were the assistant coach under Gary Gold. We failed to qualify, unfortunately. But what are your long-term plans? Are you going to stay involved with USA Rugby, or is it kind of just...
Look, I spoke to them, and I spoke to World Rugby too. But some things have to change to make that happen. Obviously, I was good friends with Gary Gold, and when Gary asked me to come on board, I obviously accepted because of Gary, because I didn't know anybody else in the Eagles setup. So I came just for him, and then I really liked the whole ambience of the team. I really liked the players, and you start loving the players too. I mean, I'm not American, so it's not about the flag and stuff like that, but it's about the people involved. And I really love to work with those guys again, and I hope they feel the same way too. But at this point, there's nothing concrete. What I would say is that there's a lot of growing and learning and developing to do over here in the States, and that excites me. The fact that in 8 years' time there's a World Cup over here excites me too. So I want to be involved in some kind of way in American rugby. It doesn't mean I want to be involved with the Eagles. I want to be involved with American rugby, and pretty much I came over here hand in hand with Santiago Sodini, and I think we'll work together for the years to come.
Okay. The next one, as far as what are the coaching staff's goals here with developmental players locally? Do you have an idea of what you'd like to do locally to develop local talent through our club systems here?
100%. Well, we just this morning, this is our first day off, and we've been working 24/7 over here. And we went to a high school in Dallas, where they have I don't remember the name. It's a Christian.
Okay. Either Jesuit or St. Mark's. Yeah, there's a couple of big ones.
But they have a rugby program.
Yeah, probably Dallas Jesuit.
But there you go. So we're gonna provide them with coaching like throughout the year.
Awesome.
And we're gonna do events together. We were thinking about bringing the kids over here in halftime and play touch rugby and stuff like that.
Beautiful.
To get them involved into rugby, but not only them, but especially the parents, which are the ones that take them everywhere. So it'll be great if we can start doing something. And then we went to a high school in Fort Worth where we train.
Yeah.
And we want to do something with them too. And then the idea is to get an academy running over here and get guys from 14, 15, 16, 17 years old coming over here, getting coached by our coaching staff at least once a week or twice a week, and then develop that and build that into next year and get it going.
Next question is actually a personal question of mine. Earlier, I guess late last year, we had the Northern Tour, and there was a situation with the Pumas playing Scotland. Julian Montoya, your captain, says something that was a bit of a soundbite. I laughed, and he asks a Scottish player, "Would you like me to say it in Afrikaans for you?" And this comes to a great question here, because me being a Springbok fan, you being a former Puma, you look at World Rugby as a whole, and I mean, even living in America here as well, you look at the teams that rely heavily on imported talent. Scotland, Ireland has Kiwis and Aussies on their team. France, Italy, all of them really rely heavily. And then you take a step back and you look at the two teams that are really the only two domestic teams in the world, and it's Argentina and South Africa
and Georgia.
You look at the Romania, same kind of way. Obviously, you came from the amateur era to the professional era. You saw that transition happen. I'm even old enough to go back and watch the All Blacks when the only minority player they had was Sir Brian Williams. They were predominantly a European Caucasian team in New Zealand.
Not anymore.
And then now they
Tongan, Fijian,
Eddie Jones said it funniest, which is, oh yeah, you've got the 3 biggest academies in the world in Tonga, Fiji, and Samoa.
Yeah, but same thing for Australia.
And Japan, which is a third Tongan-born players now. But then, like I said, you take a step back and you look at the countries in South America, Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, all domestically born and raised players. South Africa, domestically, you could say Beast, he was from Zimbabwe. That's one of the rare things, but for the most part, these 2 teams have remained 100% organic teams.
I think it is. There's various reasons, but one of the reasons is that we're far from everybody. So the immigration.
South Africa is kind of the same thing too. Yeah.
So the immigrations that we get over there is from the closest countries, and there's not much rugby being played over there, and even genetically, there's not like big guys. Or
they're not made for the size.
Yeah, they're not made for rugby, or not ideally made for rugby. Yeah. So that's one of them. But I would say that we're pretty proud of that. Like we wanna stay that way, and now we never had a foreigner play for Argentina, never ever. So we're pretty happy with that.
It's kind of one of those things. Back to that 07 Cup, I was a big.
Sorry, and I want to make it clear. I know Julian is not proud of what he said.
He wasn't. Yeah, I know he wasn't proud. I saw the apology. It was just kind of a note that it was like, hey, that because there were a lot of South Africans on that Scottish side, and it's kind of goes back to 2007, the Tonga team in that cup playing in the group of death with South Africa, the eventual champions, England, the returning champions. I believe it was a quote from Epi Taione, who was one of their flankers, I think, or did he play? He played center, I think, in that. But he said that Tonga, Fiji, and Samoa have never won a World Cup, but Tongans, Fijians, and Samoans have all won a World Cup. I have a special place for especially Tonga. I have a very special place in my heart for those guys, just because we do have a Tongan community here. You'll see me with the Pacific Island players. I call them Uso, Toko, I greet them in their own language. World Rugby recently finally changed the eligibility rules to where you can go back and play for your home nation or whatever. And we did get something cool out of it. We got to see All Black Malachi Fekitoa dress up. We got to see Israel Folau make his return to rugby union. Do you think that this, I hate to just use the word, but poaching of foreign-born players, do you think it's just going to get worse, or do you think...
So no.
You think it's a bottle, the cap has come off and you can't put the cap back on?
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, it's difficult for those guys to refuse the opportunity to play with the All Blacks or with Scotland, Wales, Ireland, I don't know, France, especially a guy like South African guy like Willem, say.
Yeah.
He left South Africa when he was 20, 21, and he started playing over there and started learning the language, the culture and stuff like that, and then he's given the opportunity before his country of origin.
Yeah.
Difficult to refuse. I would have never ever. I lived 15 years in France. I never got the passport because I felt I was betraying my country.
But wanted to play for the Pumas.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to have a passport that wasn't Argentinian. But that's just
personal choice. Yeah. It's I agree. Nothing wrong with that. We're almost getting done with these questions here. So something that happened, Swanee in Johannesburg, he's one of my followers, he wanted to ask this. Obviously, we had a bit of delay in the match day 23 being released to the public, and there's been some issues with roster. We still don't know the roster, that kind of thing. Is this just something that maybe you're holding your cards a little close to your chest, or is it
It's more visa, and so they have to go, when they get here, they have to go through the medicals and stuff like that, and then there was the, how do you say, the passes? So they have to bring the pass, the rugby pass, Argentinian rugby pass to the US, and it was Friday, and we didn't have 4 of them.
So you still didn't even know. Okay, I understand that. Next question comes from another follower in South Africa. This is Josh in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal. What do you think of the Springboks and their culture?
I love it. And I think I said it to you that day in the Jersey press. it's incredible how similar the cultures are, and like even when physically we don't look alike, like the culture, and not only the culture in the country, but related to rugby.
The rugby culture is very much similar.
Very much similar.
We had a couple of people asking about, and they brought this up about the game, and it was like not really realizing that I call the Sabercats the Saber Box. It's obviously a very South African side. We're getting called Los Pumitas, or we have a nickname for our side with the Argentinian influence. Is the plan in the books to start utilizing more domestic-born players as this goes along, or is it to continue to kind of fill those gaps with foreign-born players?
No. The whole idea when we're thinking about going to the high schools and stuff like that, not only high schools, but what do you call
middle school? I still call it primary, intermediate, and senior.
And then creating an academy over there. The whole idea is to, in the mid or long term, is
to create American
players, and obviously the best players that we knew were Argentinians, and it was easy for us to know not only that they were good players, but their backgrounds. Are they good guys? Would they get over here and get into the community?
Could they assimilate to living here? That kind of thing.
They're all pretty fluent in English too, so that's another thing that we considered. And over here, in every meeting we only talk in English. So we ask the guys to really get a good feel of the team and the community. And we now obviously, for the reasons I was saying before, that we didn't have everybody over here, and maybe at one point we're understaffed and stuff like that, we're working a lot. Now that it's beginning to flow, now we're starting to go to the high schools and mid schools, and we're gonna start planning how we're gonna develop the academy and stuff like that, and go to the community. We are going to coach one night UNT,
yeah, Denton. This is where I live. So
UNT, we talked to the guys over there, and we're gonna help them. So the more we have established our system over here, our processes over here, the more we can go out and relate with the rugby community around Arlington and Dallas.
So, just a couple last questions here. This was from Michael, a Jackal Den member. I know you've been working a lot, obviously. It's been kind of rugby, Jackals. Have you gotten out and eaten American food yet? And do you have any particular American food that you enjoy yet?
No, really. I mean, we ate a lot of the bad stuff.
Pizza, like, barbecue, etc.,
but not like really good American food. We went to Foxworth, and like being a farmer, I like all that stuff, and I with my brother we breed quarter horses in Argentina.
Oh wow!
And I know there's the futurity over here, and there's a lot of events and rodeos and stuff like that. So I would like to start going to those events. I would love to.
That's cool. You're kind of like getting into the Texas culture here. And I guess the last question that we have from one of the followers is, has there been any culture shock moments here in America for you yet? Has there been any? Yes.
No,
I mean, the first time you got on the motorway and you saw these big trucks, you weren't like, oh my God.
Well, no, traffic in Argentina, it's pretty scary. Yeah. No, maybe the size of the motorways.
The vehicle, the width and everything.
Yeah, and just getting lost a little bit sometimes. Like when you get to a crossroads, there's 3 levels of motorways crossing, and
I still think the biggest culture shock for me when I came here was the first time I went outside of a bar, and a guy had a shotgun in the back window of his car, and I was like,
I haven't seen that.
Whoa! Yeah. Or seeing somebody with a gun out in public, and you're just like, whoa! Yeah. Like America.
I haven't bumped into those.
Yeah, it's
just yet. So.
But one last thing here, since you are new to Texas here, I had to stop and get you some Texas things here. So first off, these are called beaver nuggets. They're not made out of beaver. They're puffed corn, I believe is what it is. A little bit of a sweet snack here if you got a sweet tooth. Share it with the boys. You will be seeing a Buc-ee's when you do the Houston trip. They're these absolutely massive petrol stations. I mean, they're the size of grocery stores.
Right.
They're huge. And then I figured, hey, something you can maybe send back home to the kids, or I got you a Buc-ee's bobblehead doll.
Well, thank you very much.
But it's just, hey, you're in Texas now, and this is how we do it. Let you have some Texas things here, just to get a little bit of enjoyment out of that. So go ahead.
I have to take the tape out.
You got it. You've got strong hands. You were a hooker.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. You got it. Look at this.
So this is for the car.
Yeah, or anywhere. Put it in your office, anything.
I will leave it over here.
Yeah. It's just something from Texas, man, so you always will remember your time here, man, in Texas. So, yeah, no worries,
Thank you very
man.
much.
Thank you for taking the time out with us. Once again, this is the Jackal Den podcast by the fans for the fans. Cheers, guys.